If you like this video, be sure to check out my first video on Trolls Hot Takes, where I shared plenty more of your hot takes with the Trolls franchise. Just a little reminder just in case any of you haven't watched our first video on hot takes. Now on with this video. Hello everypony, it's the Winged Unicorn and I have flown back with another video. Yes, I am still wearing my Christmas outfit because according to my rules, the holidays aren't over until I say they're over. Anyways, a few months ago, I made a Trolls Hot Takes video where I read some of your guys' hot takes regarding the Trolls franchise, and you guys really seemed to like that video. So, due to popular demand, I decided to bring it back for one last hurrah to wrap up the year. Just like in that first video, it's going to work in the same exact way. You guys sent in your hot takes, and I will be reading them in this video, and I'm going to say whether I agree or disagree and explain why I have those opinions regarding those hot takes. Alright, enough rambling, you guys know the drill. Now let's start with those hot takes. This first hot take was in the comments of my first video, and I thought it was really interesting, so I decided to start off this video with this hot take. And this is by Gabriel Kunga 7182. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your name right. So they said, I don't like how they handle redemptions. Apart from Veneer and Poppy, it seems like the writers can't redeem characters. And it's not hate, I love all these characters. For example, Queen Barb. I am a huge Barb lover. I even watched World Tour because of her, but her redemption was terrible. This girl literally destroyed homes and kidnapped many, and just by a song she's changed? To me, Creek is one of the best twist villains I've ever seen, but in Trolls Beat Goes On, if they were going to bring back his character, why gaslight Branch and the audience into believing that the events of him betraying his kind was just a simple mistake. John Dorie, Bruce, and Clay kinda got off a little too easy. I'd put Floyd here, but at least he promised Branch he'd be back and said a proper goodbye. The three other brothers did not, especially John Dorie. Sure, he's funny, but he never apologizes for forcing his brothers to be perfect, like forcing Bruce to exercise before the performance, forcing Clay to wear clothing he doesn't want, or just how bossy he is, saying this is an eldest sibling. This isn't a good moral to send to kids. The writers can still do this. Poppy is still given flaws and she learns from them. Veneer is arrested alongside his sister instead of being let off, showing the writers know how to develop their characters. So that's all I'm going to say to get off my chest. Thank you for reading if you made it this far. So overall, I'm going to have to agree with this take because I myself have realized that the writers of Trolls may or may not give proper redemption arcs to their characters, or when they do, they don't really handle them very well. Like what this person said, Barb kinda got off way too easily because objectively speaking, I suppose she is like the most destructive out of all the villains. At least Chef and Creek did canonically die, and I'm saying canonically because when you mentioned Creek, luckily Beat Goes On and Trollstopia, they're not canon to the overall movie universe. So while I do understand your complaints with Creek, and yes, I really hated that episode where they practically gaslight Branch and the audience into thinking that he changed, even though like you can't really turn back from that mistake, man. Even so, it's not canon, and that's probably for the best, both for the characters and my sanity. In the case for Barb, it would have been nice to see her progression into actually redeeming herself. Like, okay, let's say that they forgive her because I guess, you know, Poppy is naturally just a forgiving person. But it would have been nice to see Barb be portrayed in the show, which is why I'm not really too big of a fan of how Trollstopia went into its direction with their characters. Still haven't seen Trollstopia, but it would have been nice if instead of making brand new characters for Poppy to hang out with that, you know, were not introduced in the movie, it would have been nice if Barb was just in it so that we can see her progression. Like from the little bit I know about Val, that progression into her character should have been used on Barb. And guess what? I am a Barb lover too, and she's one of my favorite characters in the franchise. Yet I do agree that maybe we could have seen her redemption be a little bit better instead of what we got at the end of World Tour. As for the Brozone brothers, I 100% agree with that too. Similar to what I said about Barb, more time could have been given to really show that they are sorry, especially on John Dory's part. To Band Together's credit, however, it is kind of evident that John Dory does want to change because he does let Branch lead with the perfect harmony scene and is accepting of the fact that they don't have to be perfect anymore and they can just sing in order to save Floyd. Yeah, there's no direct apology from him, but it's quite evident that he does want to change just from that scene alone. But I hope in future projects, when they do bring back these characters, we can see more progression in their arcs, and for Barb's case, earn her proper redemption. Honestly, really good hot take. It actually made me think that I should probably make an entire video based on this topic in Trolls, so really good hot take. This next one is from Mariah375, who commented this on Wattpad, which, by the way, if you don't follow me on Wattpad, make sure you follow me on there. Shameless plug there. So one of them said Veneer deserves more respect and kindness than Velvet, and another says Velvet is much ruder than all the previous Trolls villains. So I chose these hot takes because this is something that I've also wanted to discuss. I've seen people talk about how they prefer Veneer over Velvet, which is totally fine. After all, Veneer is the more sympathetic one since he's the one who actually felt remorse throughout the movie. Not even just at the end there, but I guess throughout the movie he does look like he feels a little bit bad for what he's doing. However, I'm gonna have to disagree with both of these hot takes of yours, because at the end of the day, Veneer still did do the crimes that he did, and he can't just have walked scot-free from his punishment. Like what Crim said, you know, he engaged in troll napping, troll torture, and a tax evasion too, let's not forget that. So he still did do the crime, so it's time for him to do the time. And even though I pointed out that he did feel remorseful throughout the movie, he also enjoyed what he was doing, or at least enjoyed from the benefit from what he was doing. You'll remember that scene where he was talking with Floyd and saying, "Sorry, it's nothing personal, I just love my sister, and my fame, and my money, and the things I bought." Like, he still enjoyed what he was doing because he got something out of it. He could be just as superficial as Velvet, and people seem to forget that. So at the end of the day, Veneer still needed to pay for his crimes. Like I said, you guys are allowed to like Veneer more than Velvet. It's just I also don't really like the whole babying that this fandom does. Not even the fandom, but it's more like the people who do tune in to Trolls 3 because of Velvet and Veneer, because I see this happen more in that side of the fandom, where they kind of like baby Veneer and like only like ever talk about Velvet like in a more bad light. Yes, she's more cynical, but at the end of the day, like I keep saying, Veneer also did those same crimes that Velvet did, so it was good for him to go to jail as well. So even though I'm gonna have to disagree with you here, pretty solid hot takes. Bumpy Gaming has this hot take: Bobby's character development isn't talked about enough. I often find myself thinking about how World Tour had her trying way too hard to be a good queen, to now Band Together where she immediately goes to support Branch after that fight with his brothers. I 1000 agree with this take. I said it once in my last video and I will say it again, Poppy's character is seriously misunderstood, and not just the people who watch the films but even the fandom itself. People often criticize Poppy when it comes to her mistakes that she made throughout the movies, and while discussing how a character can be better is fine in and of itself, people often make a case for Poppy, saying how she was very immature in the first few films, and even to go as far as to say that she is a very annoying character, all because of her unrealistic optimism and at her admittedly pushy attitude when it comes to the first two films. And all I have to say is Poppy is a flawed character, and the movies always knew this. They never pretend that she is a perfect person, and the reason why she even made those mistakes in the first place is because this is what is called a character progression. Poppy learns that what she's doing in the beginning is wrong, and she changes from that, and she grows as a person. And like what Bumpy Gaming said, by the time when the third film hits around, she is a lot more mature, and you can see that when you compare her in that film compared to the first film. And this hot take brings up World Tour and how she wants to be a good queen. That is only a natural thing for her to do. She wants to be a good leader because what she thinks in the moment is best for her people. Yes, she is unfortunately blocking people out when she is doing this, but she learns throughout the film that this isn't okay. And this is why she and Barb are good parallels, because Barb is similar to Poppy, at least when it comes to being a leader and trying to see what's best for their people. They both make mistakes while doing this, but they think whatever they're doing is the way to go and the best way to help their own people. If Poppy never went on this journey and learned this, she would never teach Barb that real harmony takes lots of voices. Different voices, and differences doesn't have to make us weaker, it can in fact make us stronger, and hearing those other voices is the only true way of harmony and peace. This is another topic that I hope to get into in a future video when it comes to Poppy and her character progression, because this is something I feel very strongly about. Poppy is a major favorite of mine in the Trolls franchise, and it really does irk me a little bit when people misrepresent her and don't realize that the mistakes that she does make throughout the films is for a purpose, and she is just growing as a person, which is what you would want in a character. So overall, 1000% agree with this take. DWA Fan 1995 has several takes, but I want to go over the few that stuck out to me. Number 1 being Chef Bergen is the only Trolls character I hate. Pretty fair hot take. I mean, after all, at least when you compare to other troll villains, she is the least entertaining, at least in my opinion. Of course, I understand her purpose in the story, and as a matter of fact, she's definitely does play her role in the story, especially when it comes to the whole Trolls This storyline in the first Trolls movie. But compared to the really awesome villains that we got, for example, Barb, Velvet, and Veneer, and to an extent, Creek, because at least there's a lot to say with him, in the context of all that, she's a little bit, I guess, the least, entertaining one. I will forever mourn the loss of that one deleted song that we could have gotten in the first movie, because I feel like that would have spiced her up a little bit. Overall, 50-50 on that first one. Number 2, Val Thundershock is better than Queen Barb, and you still love Queen Barb. People can have their own opinions about Val. I mean, I do like her character design, and from the little bit I do know about the character, she seems pretty alright. But yeah, I prefer Queen Barb, because like I said, she's one of my favorites, and I really like her whole character in World Tour, so I'm gonna have to stick with Queen Barb. But, you know, solid enough hot take. The last one from them, Trollstopia and Trolls Band Together are the best installments of the Trolls franchise. I agree with Trolls Band Together, but I can't really say much about Trollstopia. I feel like Trolls Band Together is definitely the best movie of the franchise that we've gotten so far. I feel like within every single movie, it gets more and more, interesting and a lot more fun. I still look back at the first 2 movies rather fondly, and I get extreme nostalgia from the first Trolls movie. Still looking at the entire Trolls franchise, the third one is definitely my favorite, so I'm gonna have to agree with that take. Trollstopia, like I said, can't really say much about that, but you do you, boo. The next 2 are from the Passionate Geek, both of them being rebuttals at common critiques that non-Trolls fans would throw at the movie, so I'm going to read both of them. World Tour having rock trolls be villains is offensive to rock fans. You do realize that it would have been the same alternative if it was any other genre. Why is it rock that gets all of the anger? Heck, other genres are shown as villains in the film, and you don't see anyone complaining. Number 2, the trolls are a metaphor for drugs. Okay, how is this a critique? Yet it's very obvious that the trolls are a metaphor for drugs. How does that take down the quality of the film? Also, if the trolls are a metaphor for drugs, then the film is technically an anti-drugs film. Okay, since the Bergens learned that they don't need trolls for happiness. So when it comes to that first one, I feel like people are just more, tired of the whole stereotype that rock means evil, because in real life, people do seem to demonize rock bands. And I guess I do kind of understand that critique, though, that people have against, how rock music is portrayed in media. Also, you brought up how the rock trolls aren't even the only ones that are being antagonized in the film, because the film also explains how the pop trolls were also doing something similar to what Barb is doing currently many years ago, according to the funk trolls, to explain the trolls' history. And it's Barb who doesn't realize that she's doing exactly what the pop trolls are doing many years ago, and she's becoming the very thing that she swore to destroy. Even so, you could say that this movie is a critique on the pop industry. Barb was just an obstacle for then Poppy can realize that on her own while still functioning as an antagonist. She just so happens to be rock. So even though I do agree with you on this first take, I do at least understand the complaint that people have when media portrays rock music in their films. As for your second take, all I can say for this whole metaphor of trolls being drugs is,
Lots of things that are portrayed in media can be a representation for something in real life, and that includes kids' movies. Even in some cases, the writers actually purposefully connect real life things into their movies. That doesn't make your film bad necessarily. If anything, it kind of subconsciously teaches kids about the world around them. So going back to that whole metaphor of trolls being for drugs, while I think it's kind of an outlandish statement to make about trolls, I also just think that it's not really a critique of the film. If anything, it could be just something that the film could have implemented to at least subconsciously show people that they don't need to overly rely on drugs, or I guess in this case, antidepressants. We're slowly getting a little bit off topic here, but overall, nice to see somebody who isn't totally involved in the Trolls franchise and see that these critiques aren't exactly fair critiques of the movie. SpinFox23 says, Trolls Fun Fair Surprise wasn't a bad series. Also, I think people expected too much from it in terms of animation. Example, expecting it to look like a $95 million movie rather than just an episodic series of shorts based off Trolls. For what it is, I liked it, and I was glad they gave us more Trolls and even brought back Viva. So, I feel like this is a total fair hot take of yours. Personally, I gotta be totally honest with you guys, not only did I not care for Fun Fair Surprise, but I also didn't see an actual episode of Fun Fair Surprise. Like you said, it's totally fair that, that you like it, and, people shouldn't have to expect, like, a total, like, well-designed, well-animated series on YouTube. But the reason why I didn't tune into Fun Fair Surprise is because it just didn't appeal to me, and I just wanted to skip out on this one, you guys. It's totally fine that you like it, and I'm even glad that you enjoyed it, but personally I just didn't care for it and didn't really get into it. These next two are from Speed for Spectre. The first one reading, Trolls is DreamWorks top tier new IP replacing, Madagascar. I would say the brand got its act together once leaving Hasbro after a strong 2016, early 2019, but was awful in World Tour. Mattel handling the brand been better because Hasbro would have never done a Fun Fair Surprise. Right now, Trolls is dormant, but has merged both Trolls 3 but rebranded Trolls 2016 Legacy merch. Mostly shirts repurposed from kids to everyone. I do think a franchise break is good for the writers, but bad for merchandise because the franchise won't be as popular for anyone, either kids or us older fans. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about merchandising, mostly because I often get merchandise really late, so I don't really have a good idea of what merchandise looks like, especially because in general it's just really been hard for me to get any Trolls merchandise as of lately, both for financial reasons and for personal reasons. What I can say though, at least in terms of the merchandising, I am glad that they did move over to Mattel, and I thought it was a pretty solid move because from there I feel like the franchise was able to remedy itself when it comes to merchandising sales. When it comes to World Tour, however, we also got to remember what happened during the release of World Tour in terms of the state of the world. Unfortunately, during that time, a lot of things released were going to be screwed over no matter what, unfortunately. But I do agree that moving it over to Mattel was beneficial. I mean, look, we did get some pretty solid merchandising, at least from what I can see. Personally, I only bought plushies just because I'm a plushies person. But from what I can see, at least the toy sales were actually pretty solid. I saw some play sets, and we even got some blind bag merchandising, which were pretty cool. And it overall just kind of reminded me of the olden days when the franchise first came out, which I was happy about. As for the overall franchise taking a break, and how you said that it's beneficial for the writers, but not so much for the merchandising, this is just how I see it, but personally, I don't think it's necessarily bad for merchandising. Personally, I think the franchise in general does benefit from taking a break, just because I feel like the franchise just needs a bit of time to breathe. Yes, it's pretty dormant right now, but I feel like that's a good thing, so then they can see what worked and what didn't work, so then when the next major Trolls movie, special, or anything releases, then the people in charge of the merchandising will be ready. Their next one says, I think Trolls 1 and Trolls Band Together represent Trolls as a franchise better than World Tour, but World Tour is still a great film. So I do agree that Trolls World Tour is still a great film, even after everything that has came out since World Tour, but I'm going to have to refute for Trolls Band Together. Of course, I understand what you mean with this hot take.
Just because Trolls 1 and Trolls Band Together represents the Trolls franchise better, or at least that's what the claim is, that doesn't mean Trolls World Tour doesn't represent the franchise at all. I understand that, of course, but I'm saying this just to give World Tour a bit more credit. I feel like because of World Tour that we were able to expand the Trolls franchise as much as we do now. Thanks to that film, it's where the franchise truly dives into how big the Trolls world is, the types of trolls there are, basically the entire Trolls lore and Trolls history, and it was that film that introduced more Trolls characters that fans still love to this day. I always say that every single Trolls sequel seems to be more wild and fun than the last, and I feel like that's just the overall nature of DreamWorks films, especially for the DreamWorks sequels. I mean, look at something like Shrek and Kung Fu Panda. It's because of those sequels that we were able to see other settings and even characters that are not just from the first movie, and it's usually because of the second sequel of these franchises that we're able to do that, and I feel like Trolls World Tour is no exception. Again, I just wanted to say this because I wanted to give Trolls World Tour a little bit more credit. Still a really solid hot take. So we're going to have this last one by the Your Local Aussie Weeb, and they said, my hot take is that I think some people shouldn't take Broppy super seriously, and by that I mean by the fact that people are way too aggressive / passionate about it. So I know where this person is coming from. I feel like people do get a little bit too aggressive over ships, but unfortunately that's just the nature of fandom culture. Not saying that this sort of behavior should be normalized in fandoms. I mean, I'm a strong advocate for having rational discussions, but at least when it comes to this fandom, when it comes to its Broppy shippers, I don't see many people being too aggressive about it. If this person is saying this because they had a bad experience with people who are too overbearing with their ships, then I feel for them and I deeply apologize for that. This sort of behavior shouldn't be normalized, but from what I can see, I feel like this fandom is pretty decent when it comes to handling their ships. I personally am a huge Broppy shipper, and I tend to express that in a very calm manner. As someone who does like to fangirl over things and easily gets excited over her favorite things, I also try my best to keep my composure in front of other people. Not saying it's bad to fangirl over things, but there should also be a level of courtesy in fandoms. So while I don't have a problem with people in this fandom when it comes to their ships, and I haven't seen any problems arise from this, I do agree that people should be, at the very least, careful when it comes to being overly obsessive with these ships and not trying to ruin the fun for everybody. Basically, you're allowed to be passionate, but also have some courtesy when it comes to shipping, and that applies to the canon ships as well. So I feel like that was a decent enough take to end this video on. And I know in my last hot takes, I gave you guys 3 of my own hot takes about the Trolls franchise. While I don't have 3 more to share, I do at least have 1 more prepared for you guys to hear. So my hot take that I want to end this video off on is I feel like in the next movie, they should really take it easy on introducing newer characters. And that's because I feel like the Trolls franchise has a really big problem when it comes to introducing newer characters while also balancing out the older characters that we were introduced to in the previous movies. If you guys have seen my Viva video, you probably get the gist of where this is going in terms of how I think this franchise treats its characters. The franchise is seriously overcrowded right now because of all of these characters that were introduced, especially because of World Tour, and especially with Band Together completely neglecting the snack pack and even characters that were introduced in World Tour. Yes, I know Trolls 3 didn't have a focus on them because we were having a focus on Branch specifically and his family, but it's because of how far-fetched these movies are that these characters will get neglected at some point. And I unfortunately have reason to believe that this is going to be the case with the Brozone brothers. I know before I said that the Trolls franchise gets crazier and even more fun within every movie, and while that can be a blessing, there's also, I guess, a negative side to it, especially when it comes to characters that were introduced before, especially if some of those characters actually work for the story and people seem to appreciate them, like with me and Viva. All I'm saying is, in the future movie, whatever they decide to do, I hope they at least take it easy on the newer characters, and hopefully, depending on how the story goes, maybe we can have some time for the other characters to shine, whether be it the snack pack or the troll tribe leaders. So that was all the hot takes that I have for you today. And I want to quickly thank everybody who sent them in. Just like last time, you guys did not disappoint. And I would like to sincerely apologize for how long this video took to finally be uploaded. This has been the busiest semester ever so far, and I really didn't have the time to come back to this channel and finish what I wanted to do. Even so, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and congrats to this video for being the first video of 2026 on this channel. I know it's March and this is very late, but like I said, I sincerely apologize. On the bright side, this video was fun, and if you would like to comment down below to say if you agree or disagree with any of these hot takes, let me know. Of course, stay civil, especially because these hot takes are from other people, so as long as you keep the conversation civil in the comments, then it should be all good. So comment below what you think. I really like hearing from you guys, so don't be afraid to type away. Anyways, that's all I have for today. The winged unicorn is about to fly away. See you guys in the next video, which I really hope isn't too far off from this video, but I suppose only time will tell. Anyways, I'll see you guys when that video appears. Bye bye!